You've probably heard of a financial plan. The question is, do you have a life plan? What is a life plan? In today's episode, we're going to talk it all out. We got a great guest. Make sure you listen all the way to the end.
We hope you've been enjoying all the episodes from Secure Your Retirement. If you'd like to keep learning and receiving these episodes, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you receive alerts when they come out. We've helped thousands of listeners get on the path to securing their retirement. Now it's your turn. Let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone, to Secure Your Retirement Podcast. We are excited today because we get to talk about a topic that I think is something that we all need to talk about. We all need to make sure that we're planning for. And so we have a special guest. Her name is Corinne Allman, and she's written a book called Keen Ager. And we'll talk about what that means here in a moment. But before we get too far into this, let me just say, Corinne, thank you very much for coming on and talking with us and our audience today.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So to give you some context, I think that for the audience listening is that Corinne actually is a person who helps individuals as they're trying to figure out different health scenarios that they might find themselves in. And then that led her to a whole different place of let's make sure we plan for it. And because we work with a very similar group of people on a little different path sometimes, we thought it would be very nice to have you come on, Corinne, and talk a little bit about maybe your background first and then what that's led you to. So would you mind just setting the stage here, kind of what it is that you do, like if you want to say for a living during the day, and what that led you to down this other path?
Sure. So my day job is as a care manager, and I run a care management practice where we help people typically when there's a crisis. So a lot of our clients come in, everything was fine until, and then there's been some sort of event with a loved one, either a parent or a spouse, and all of a sudden they need to know everything there is to know about senior care, about what Medicare pays for and doesn't pay for. They're trying to figure out what kind of care they can afford, whether or not the individual can go home after a hospital stay, just everything. So they have found themselves in a situation where someone they love has had a crisis, and so they're very stressed out because of that. And then they also need a complete education in the senior care, healthcare kind of world. And that's a hard spot to be in because you're stressed out, you're trying to learn a bunch of stuff, and it's really overwhelming. It's one of those situations where you don't know what you don't know until you get there. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, I need to know everything. So that's where we step in. We have social workers, nurses, gerontologists on staff, and we can assist a family in navigating through that whole process. And that's a typical client. I love it when we get a client who everything is fine and they are going, no, I'm just planning ahead, right? I'm thinking about where I want to be in 10 years. Do I want to move into a community? Do I want to update my home so that it's senior friendly? What do I want to do? I would say those are about 5% of my clients. 95% of my clients are the crisis situation.
Gotcha. So I think that's very similar in our world of we want to strive to get to where we're more proactive about financial planning and retirement planning rather than being reactive. And that's kind of what you're dealing with too. So obviously you've been doing this for a while and you've seen a lot of the scenarios where let's react based off of reality. And maybe is that what led you to say, well, I would like to flip this in a different direction? And so tell us a little bit about the motivation to write the book Keen Ager, and tell us what that title means to you and kind of the whole premise of that book.
Yeah. So when I started my care management agency 12 years ago now, I really thought I was going to be working with 40-year-olds who were caring for 70-year-old parents. And I'm really wrong. I was really wrong because I am working with 70-year-olds who are caring for 95-year-old parents. And that experience of seeing what my 75-year-old or 70-year-old adult children are like. They are active. A lot of them are still working. They are volunteering. They're entrepreneurs. They're doing all kinds of stuff. They are still living full lives while caring for those 90-something-year-old parents. And having that experience of watching them and watching who they're caring for really made me think, boy, I've got this aging thing all wrong, right? I thought by 70, 75, you were the one who needed all the care. And that is not the case at all. And my background's in gerontology, like I have a PhD in this field. And I thought, if I'm so wrong about what older adulthood is like today, what do all the other people who don't have a lot of experience working with older adults, what do they think older adulthood is like? And it's the stereotypes. Like, most people really believe that the stereotypes that you see in media and that we're kind of told and that we see on the birthday cards with the jokes and things, they really believe that those stereotypes, number one, are true, that it's all downhill, that sort of thing. And they also think that that's what your life is like at 70. Whereas today, 70 really is part of an extended middle adulthood. And we don't have good words to describe how much older adulthood has changed. If you just look up words for older adults, they're almost all negative and indicative of some sort of decline. So the teenager word, the title of my book, came about because I was trying to write about, let's think about aging in this new way, because it really has changed. It's not your grandparents' older adulthood. Things are very different now. You're going to live longer. You're going to live healthier. There's going to be a lot more time to do stuff. And there's no good words to describe older adulthood in a positive way. So the teenager word, keen means highly developed, and it means having a real interest in something. Like, I'm keen on that. I like it. I'm interested in it. And I think that really describes what older adulthood is like today. We have so many more years of being active and engaged and keen on life that we just didn't have in previous generations. And we need to think about that in a new way. If you think about older adulthood as starting at, let's say, 65, when Social Security was first enacted in the 1930s, you retired at 65 and the average American lifespan was 67. Today, you retire at 65. Well, the average lifespan is like 77. And we have more centenarians, people living to 100, and super centenarians, people living to 110, than we've ever had before. So it's really not your grandparents' older adulthood. Things have significantly changed, and we need new words to describe it.
Yeah, well, that's great. I'm glad you gave us kind of that big picture there. So I kind of like as I listen to you talk about this, because I think that, we in our world, we're helping people plan well in advance. We do talk about, the things you would think about a financial advisor. We are talking about the financial, the taxes, the estate plan. We do talk about healthcare in the context of, Medicare and those kind of things, Social Security, all those different topics. And then we have clients that are saying, yeah, when I'm 70, 75, I'm going to look to maybe go to this continuous care retirement community. Or like you said, maybe I'll think about this idea of, do I upfit the house or move to a house that I could age in place there. So if you had to, let's just dream it for a second, and based on how you've written and what your experience is, when, and then I'm going to use two questions here. When do you think that somebody should really start thinking about this, ideally? And then what does that even look like? Like, what am I supposed to be thinking about? I'm 52. So, I sit here and in my head, I kind of, I do think about how I would live life out that way. But I mean, how would you answer that? Like, when and what should I think about?
So I think everyone should think about it, but realistically, most people start thinking about it in their 40s and 50s. I just turned 50 in April, so I'm having that experience myself too, right? I'm in this world and I'm thinking, I got to do this too. But I really definitely in your 50s, you need to start thinking about, what do I want this second half to look like? And not only financially is hugely important, right? We have to be thinking about, how am I going to make this money last for as long as possible, because we are living so much longer. But also, what am I going to do if I do retire, if I move away from my current job? What am I going to do for intellectual stimulation in these coming years? What am I going to do for social stimulation? Because you don't realize how much work gives you those things, right? Like intellectual challenge, social connections, just all those sorts of daily activities that your brain really needs. The worst thing you can do for your cognitive abilities is retire and then just do nothing, right? Play golf, never do anything intellectually challenging. And what I mean there is something that makes your brain work, right? It doesn't have to be something you hate, but learning to play the guitar if you've never done that, learning a new language, whatever it is that makes your brain actively work, because that's what it needs to stay healthy. It is a use it or lose it system, just like your muscles are. So thinking about early on, what am I going to do in these next decades to make this go well, right? And plan for it accordingly. What I see is so many people we've told them this story of retirement. You get to retirement, you're going to get your gold watch and have your party, and then you're just going to like sail off into the sunset, and it's going to be amazing. And for most people, it is. They're very happy to get to retirement. They're very happy in those first 6 to 18 months. And then somewhere in there, they start to go, well, this is kind of boring. And this is what I'm going to do for the next 3 decades of my life. My mom made it 6 months. She retired, and she made it 6 months before she said, I got to go back to work, because she, had all this time on her hands. And she literally said, I didn't realize how much I got all my social connections. Like, all my friends are at work. So I got to go back. And that's the kind of thing that people go through. They've got this adjustment period where they have to figure out, what do I do? Who am I now that I've retired? Because we all need a reason to get out of bed. We all need purpose to help motivate us, to make us want to do stuff. And what is that going to be for you? So retirement planning is not just a financial scenario. It is a social, emotional, spiritual, intellectual scenario that you've got to think through and figure out. And as a society, we have not given people a good roadmap for this, because this is kind of new, right? It's kind of new that people retire, I'm putting that in quotes, and then live for decades afterwards. So what do we do with this?
Right. Yeah, and I think we try to stress the idea also of not just getting to retirement, or working hard to get to retirement. It's, you work hard because you need to have goals as far as what you want your retirement to look like,
Mm-hmm.
and encouraging people to think ahead and not just try to get there and then figure it out when they get there.
Right.
Otherwise you run into the scenario like you talked about your mom. Um, so what does this process look like, this consultative process, when someone comes to you? And let's say more of the proactive person, not necessarily the one that's reacting to, hey, mom fell and now everything's kind of hitting the fan. So what is more of this proactive? I'm trying to get things in place. I'm trying to think through what do I need to be thinking through? What does that look like when someone approaches you?
So it depends on kind of why they're approaching, right? Like if they're approaching because they are thinking about, how do I plan for this retirement, then that's like a coaching and consultation. Like, let's work through this process of, the acronym is SPIES, and this is not my original thing, but I do really like using it. And it's thinking about retirement planning in terms of spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social. Right. So I'm going to let you guys handle the financial. There's no F in SPIES, but I'm going to help them think through and kind of process through, where am I going to get all these other needs met? So that's one scenario. If somebody is approaching and they're really thinking about like retirement living and, where do I want to be, then that's thinking through, do you want to stay at home? Do we need to make modifications? Do you want to look at continuing care retirement communities? You need to get on those wait lists way ahead of when you actually want to move in, right? So some of the ones in my area have 5-year waits. You need to be thinking ahead. You don't want to wait until, hey, I'm ready to move tomorrow. That's too late. But if you're going to do upgrades to your house to make them senior friendly, you need to do that way before you actually need them, because the last thing you want to do is be coming home from the hospital after you've had a hip replacement and going, now I need to do a home renovation. Let me live through that in this house while I'm here. So thinking ahead to these things to go, what do I ultimately want my day-to-day life to look like? And then how do we put the things in place so that when that moment comes, we're ready, right? We're ready to move, or the house is all set, whatever it is. I think way too many people just go, I'll deal with it when it's time.
Yeah.
And by the time you think it's time, it's too late.
Yep.
So, I kind of, this is the way my brain works, is I kind of start thinking about what it is. So, I mean, we talk about all the time, we have a retirement focused financial plan. And I really kind of think, we try to say, because you could go get a financial plan when you're 30, right? But the retirement focused financial plan is really kind of saying, this is all focused around this. So I kind of feel like what you're describing is kind of a retirement focused life plan, meaning how am I going to live life? How am I going to, what is that life going to be like? And then how do I put that together? And I kind of see that as something that I then document the same as I would document the financial part. So I've kind of got that plan laid out.
Yep.
Well, let me ask you this. What is the resources or a way, because I know you've got your book, you've got, you told us about a website. Could you kind of walk through, if a person's listening to this and they go, man, I would like to have this conversation, or at least I want to read about it, I want to get a little bit more information, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So I have my website, which is just my name, CorinneAllman.com. And on that, you can find links to the book. You can find links to my speaking and coaching material. And you can reach out to me through that website as well.
Okay, very good. Do you have anything else, Mercy?
Well, I was just going to say, and we were talking a little bit before we started recording this, and you said you're working on another book. So I don't know if you want to give people a little teaser into what the whole premise of that one is in a couple minutes here.
Sure. So, when I wrote the first book, I got a lot of people who said, okay, I get it. I understand. I'm in. I want to do this. And then they wanted a how to do this planning, how, almost like a workbook, that kind of thing. And I've been working on that. So the next book, I don't know if this is the title for sure, but it's kind of life as a teenager. Like, how do we plan for this? And so it's going to be kind of my journey too. Like I said, I'm right here with everybody else going, how am I going to make this what I want it to be? And so it's going to be this sort of how-to manual for planning your life if you want it to go really well as you age.
All right. Well, that sounds really nice. So, Corinne, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on. I think it's been very insightful. I've enjoyed the conversation, and I think as we know that our audience, they think about these things. I just don't know that we have the tools out there. So I'm glad that you're working on this to help us have the tools to do this planning. So thank you very much for coming on and chatting with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Secure Your Retirement. If you would like to learn more, we have actually created an online course called 3 Keys to Secure Your Retirement. This video course helps you to think through all the different steps as you get ready to plan for and live throughout retirement. You can access this by going to our website, pomwealth.net. In addition, you can also subscribe below to our podcast called Secure Your Retirement.
For more retirement tips, check out these videos. Also, if you find them valuable, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a like.